afternoon, folks. Allow me to introduce Alysha Myronuk. She is a wonderful soul. I crossed paths with her in DC virtually, and then later on through the US. And then we carried on the conversation, and we ended up discovering that she has a lot of neat things that she does. And she's developed the word Myrony. It's kind of a play on her last name, and it's about the crazy coincidences that happen in life. And so she has a strong spiritual connection and tenacity, and that's actually helped her through some dark periods in time. Her superpower that she calls is her spiritual Spidey Sense, that gut feeling. The new concept she hosts right now, she does a co-host called That's My+irony. It's a podcast, and it's free to attend. It's great to hear the stories. I've listened to Mark Cantor, for example, and it was a really good conversation. You actually get backdrop stories of what's happening over in that particular one, what's happening in the IT universe. She also has a coaching business called my+irony mentoring. So that's another facet, and she helps folks unlock their blocks in their day-to-day life. Her truly desire all with a little irony. And before I kind of chop up that bio anymore, I'm going to hand it over to Alysha. And Alysha and I will be doing a back and forth chat. But I'll let her start off the gamut, and we'll go from the flow from there.
Well, thank you so much, Bernie, and thank you everyone for letting me be here today. So again, my name's Alysha Myronuk, and so you all have Myronic experiences, just not the way I spell my last name. So the concept of Myrony are really those crazy coincidences that happen in life that you can't explain, but it's also another word for sign or synchronicity. But it's different than synchronicity because it's the action behind the synchronicity. So I say it's synchronicity in motion. And so one of the things why I wanted to have a conversation is because it's always about connecting people. And I want to share how I even got here today because I'm actually in San Jose, California. So it's a very Myronic journey as to why I'm here. And it's also a very special day, which I'm going to go in a little bit more with Bernie. So to start off, this actually started in my life. I had this revelation just last night that because of an occurrence that happened 5 years ago, ended up being the catalyst. I saw this movie Wild with Cheryl Strayed. I don't know if you're familiar with that movie. And if you actually listen to the first episode of my podcast, That's My+irony, you will hear my crazy story of very, very difficult times that I went through, but I would be given these signs that would keep me going. They actually kept me alive. There's times I was suicidal because of everything that happened. A really short part of the story was I was married 1 week before my dad passed away, and I was engaged the week before that. In 6 days, I planned a wedding. I'm the only person in history who could say I was born, engaged, and married in the same hospital because my father was in hospice. And then he passed away 1 week later, but then I had a situation where I bought a restaurant. My restaurant went under, I went through a horrible divorce, like all these things in a very, very short period of time. And it was only thanks to these signs that would appear that would keep me going. So when I saw that movie Wild, it resonated so strong for those that know that movie because Cheryl Strayed is a true story of how she found her life. She got her life back after her mom passed away from cancer. And so my dad passed away from cancer. And so it resonated with me very, very strongly. And then what happened was I ended up taking a picture. So I saw this movie in December of 2015. I then ended up taking this picture of this movie ticket stub. Why the heck did I keep this movie ticket stub? I have no idea why, but I took this picture on April 21st of 2015, where the next day, my cousin, who I saw the movie Wild with, I wasn't even planning on going to lunch with her. Something told me go to lunch with her. And, I had this intuitive pull. So I joined, and then I tell her how I tell her this concept of Myrony that I came up with, and we have the same last name. And she's like, that's so, I mean, she literally said it was brilliant. And I was like, well, you're the wordsmith. It's your last name too. Why didn't you come up with it? But what was so funny is that was on April 22nd. So 422 is my number that shows up that I equate as Myrony. Now, here's the Myrony, is that on April 22nd, 2008 was the day I closed my restaurant doors, and I didn't even know it. So moving forward, so then there was an event, is actually another Canadian woman. She hosts, her name's Charlotte Brown, and she does this incredible program for women called One Woman International. But she had this One Woman Fearless Summit in San Jose. So why that Fearless Summit reminded me of Wild. So I saw it. I had this like gut feeling. I was like, I got to go to this. I went there. I ended up meeting her. And then that led to a chain of reactions of someone that I met there, that I went to this event down in LA a year later, that I felt, again, compelled to go, that then connected me to someone who got me into the podcasting world, that then connected me to my podcasting producer, whose name is Michelle Abraham. Anybody interested in podcasting, let me know. She's amazing. Who then, it was that connection that brought me to the Grand Connection, which is where I met Bernie and also Anastasia. But the funny thing about even that connection of the Grand Connection was the founders of that were in this podcasting meeting with me, and I hear about it. But that wasn't what got me to go. What got me to go was the fact that I connected with Cheryl Brewster. And I believe, Bernie, you told me that Cheryl has been on Connect Ottawa. Well, Cheryl is an intuitive like myself, and she actually teaches a course on synchronicities. So I have this conversation with her that I met through another networking group, but it was her recommendation to join the Grand Connection, that's the reason why I chose to join. And that was the day I met Bernie. So if you see how there's a catalyst, and then it's just, but you trust, there's just something, you will get this pull. You might get a message. Some people hear it, some people see it, some people feel this pull. But it was like, no, I got to do that. Now, it was Bernie who chose to reach out to me. Thank you, Bernie.
Welcome.
And when we had the conversation, he's like, oh, I'd like you to, share this concept with Connect Ottawa. And I was like, oh, that'd be awesome. He's like, well, I got 2 dates, in November. And one, I think, was like last week. And he said, oh, and the other one is November 30th. It's a Tuesday. And I was like, no, actually Tuesday is December 1st. That's actually my mother's birthday. And my mom passed away. It'll be 9 years on December 7th. And I was like, can I do the talk on December 1st, in memory? So this is in memory of my mom and wishing her a happy birthday up in heaven. And so it was so funny. I was like, oh, that's Myrony, right? How perfect. Well, it gets even funnier. And I actually wanted to just bring in a conversation because, again, it's a conversation. This was a conversation Bernie and I had on our LinkedIn profile. And he introduced me right after this conversation to Penny Lee Prevost. I think that's how she says her last name. And I don't know how many people know her, but I was then invited to do her mastermind that I just joined. So again, it's like these immediate reactions. It doesn't always have to be immediate, but it's like, when a door opens, walk in. That's like one of the biggest things with Myrony. Pay attention to it and gain the awareness, and then figure out what's the action behind it. So I told Bernie, I said, I got a chance to talk to Penny Lee and actually did her mastermind last night. I followed the Myronies between her and I. So I did her course, and it led me to connect to this woman who used to live in Ottawa, but now lives in Estonia. It's amazing what happens when we trust our intuition. And Bernie says, well, that's very true. Estonia, my wife's dad came from Estonia. Now that's a funny little Myrony, right? Now, this is where is so important about this connection with Connect Ottawa. I said, wow, that's awesome. But you want to know what's even funnier is I had no idea my mom was actually born in Ottawa. I just saw it on an old passport after looking at it after we talked. And now I'm giving the talk on her birthday. So that's Myrony.
That's several layers of Myrony. How do you help people find these pivotal moments? How do you how do you make them kind of like, oh yeah, it's like finding that penny that's always been there, but you haven't found it yet, right? And all of a sudden there it is. How do you help them find that?
So one of the things that because it really is a personal thing. So if you see a number over and over and over, like, let me tell you, I see it on license plates. I swear I'm given messages all the time on license plates. If someone saw my pictures, they would be like, why do you have so many license plates? Because those were my Myronies to, whatever. It's like, I look at Myronies as spiritual breadcrumbs. Sometimes they fall like, they come sprinkling down on you. Sometimes it's a little tiny crumb. Sometimes it's a loaf of bread. Sometimes it's like a crouton with cheese. But the smallest ones can actually have the biggest significance. So you never want to discount any of them, but it's really what speaks to you. If you hear a song, you're like, wow, that sounds like that's for me. It probably is. If you see a number, people talk about angel numbers and things like that. They catch it on their phone. They catch it in different ways. Just pay attention to it. Because really, this superpower that I say is within all of us with discovering Myrony is just awareness.
Excellent. So would you say there's like several layers of it? And it sounds like there's several layers as you're describing the journey from Grand Connection over this way, right? But there's always several layers as opposed to just one-off moments going, oh.
Well, I think why it is so deep for me is that literally my last name's Myronuk. And the person who's going to bring this concept to the world, I think you got to have some pretty crazy Myronies. So I hope you all agree that the story I just shared, even though it was quite convoluted, I hope that you were able to see the connection of the dots and how absolutely almost impossible that is without looking at it from that higher awareness of something greater. So I like to say it's the divine design that interweaves us together. It doesn't just weave us, it interweaves us on so many different levels. So it could be just a singular thing. It doesn't have to be multi-layer, multifaceted. It's just that I think that once you tap into it more and more and more is when it becomes more and more dimensional, really.
So would you say
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Bill.
So I've been living with a similar concept for the last 10 plus years and had incredible series of events in my life. In the notes, I mentioned my podcast, episode 21, where I talk about how I use this. And I had a whole series of events. And what I did just for fun is I attached probabilities to those events and that helped me sell my business. And I came up with a number that's greater than 1 in 10,000, that all those events would have come together to allow me to sell my business for the money that I needed. But my being here today is also a result of a similar process, but I use it a little differently than you do. So what I do is I give a thankfulness to the universe for what is going to be. So for example, I started writing a book a little over a year ago, and I gave a thankfulness to the universe for something that was impossible. That is that at least 1 million people would read my book, and at least half of them would have a significant improvement in their life. And then I had a whole sequence of events similar to what you're describing that led me to become a public speaker so that my ideas would get known before I published my book. That led me to doing a podcast. I had no idea what a podcast was, believe it or not, when I started all that. but a sequence of events that led me to do that, a long sequence. So what I do is I manifest it with the universe in my mind through a thankfulness for what's going to be in the future. And then I am responsible for acting on all the things the universe brings me. And it brings me a great many things, including being here today. So thank you.
No, that's wonderful. And I just want to point out, like I absolutely agree in the gratitude and manifestation, and actually, I always do it wrong. My little winky face, that's how I represent God winking at us. And I say God is love with an awesome sense of humor. So in everything that I look at, it is absolutely, and if you, whatever you want to say, source, universe, God, whatever it is, I say God, but it's just recognizing something so much greater than ourselves. So yes, could this have been, manifested? There's actually things, I'm writing a book, I'm writing a memoir, and I'm also writing a collaboration book. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk with everybody is that if you have a Myrony you want to share, I'm putting out a book to have authors be able to, author a chapter to share their Myronies, because I truly believe that with Myrony, and I just look at it, I'm a messenger. This is too brilliant for my own human self just to come up with, like I don't take credit for it. I just, it's what is meant for my destiny to I believe bring to the world, because Myrony is literally the antithesis of selfie. So my goal, and with the help of you and sharing with others, because it's all about sharing, is let people know about this word you heard. Because wouldn't it be fun to see Myronies in addition to all the selfies? I mean, I would be happy to get rid of the selfies, but sharing Myronies, because there are stories that everybody connects to. You may think it's the craziest story, but somewhere out in the world, someone is connecting to that. And so, I look at this as just raising a greater awareness, I hope, for humanity. So
Cool. So does this mean that we have control over our lives, or does that mean that things are predestined? Or is it just we're getting more into the context of understanding what's going on around us?
I believe we always, and that's the concept of free will. Free will could have been like, for example, Bernie, you reach out to me and I just ignore you. Like
No.
But like that's where free will. I believe that there are. I don't think that there's predestiny. There was a very powerful message that I received. That was, it's one foot leads straight, the other is misguided. Both are necessary and always present. Make sure to follow the straight foot because it's the fastest path to your destiny. So I think that, foot that goes off, that may be when we go against our gut intuition. I believe our gut intuition, I like to say it's our compass from God. Some people, whatever they want to connect it to, but just connecting to it just outside of ourselves. So I do believe we absolutely are the ones, we are the creators of our own lives. And, but I think that when we go against those stronger feelings, that's our free will. But if we start tapping into deeper, that inner knowing, that is in a way destiny.
Nice. So if you're coming across something and you have a gut intuition on an item, whether it's a business decision, for example, do you just act on it, or do you use somebody as a sounding board, or do you bounce the idea off? Like if if you're coming up with something different, like you're going to travel with your family, let's go to Colorado today, and we're in Canada. Do you ask them, or you just put them in the car? So do you bounce the idea off, or do you just do it, or what?
Well, I guess it depends on how big it is. Like if it's something really, really, really strong within yourself, I always just say stay with that. it may not happen at that time. It's almost like you'll know when you are supposed to. I always say that when your head starts thinking too much, when the hamster wheel's going a little too fast, it's like, say, tell your brain, please be quiet, and just sit with yourself and see what is it that your heart and your soul is actually telling you. So I don't think it's just about being, spur of the moment. That's not it either. You can have, my concept of Myrony, I've had this in my head for over 5 years. I just knew it wasn't ready. I just knew that when the day came, somehow I would know when it was supposed to be brought out. But at the same time, I also learned that to really make things happen, you have to be in action. So, I think it's a gentle balance of that. It's not to be impulsive. That's not what this is about. It's about paying attention to the signs that show up and then seeing, is there an action behind it? And usually, so I like to say, life is this giant puzzle we're given, and the Myronies are the pieces. But in a lot of ways, the Myronies are the people that we are connected to because of the signs that have led us in that direction.
Nice. So how do you train someone to pay attention to these moments then?
Well, it's really funny, when I bring it up, it starts happening almost immediately for people. It's one of the most beautiful things I get to witness when I start sharing this. And so I hope that, again, as a collective consciousness, the more it gets out there, again, selfie, we didn't know what that word was 10 years ago. I hope Myrony can be the same. However, again, it's recognizing something greater than ourselves. And so it's just way more fun, really. But, it really is just pay attention to, and I would love to know after this event, if you experience this, please let me know. I want to know. If you have an incredible Myrony, I would love to interview you on my podcast. I just want people to share their stories. Again, if it's really that incredible and you always wanted to be, well, you may be an author or you're interested in being an author of a chapter, please let me know. So, but I would really love to see if the Myrony starts showing up in your life now that you have the awareness of what this is.
Good, Margaret.
I think this is really cool, Alysha, as we got to have a little chat before. What I like for myself with this call is to put a name to it. Because, I think it's fun that if you've created a name of things that people were aware of, but maybe just didn't know what to call it. So I like that because I've had Myronies all my life. So it's not something new. It's something that didn't really have a terminology. So I think that's very cool.
Well, and the funny thing is how I came up with it. I just want to share how the word came to me.
Okay.
Because it wasn't so these actions, these signs would show up for, oh my goodness, like almost 10 years before I recognized the sign. And I recognized there was some sort of importance to it. But I used to sell Jaguars and Land Rovers when I first moved to California. So I'm originally from New Jersey, outside of New York City, and I moved to California 8 years ago. And it's a funny story of how I got into the car business. You just got to listen to episode 1 of my podcast if you want to hear the whole story of that. But people would say, how do you say your last name? And so I would say, it's like ironic, but with an M. And then I would add, there's a lot of Myrony in my life, and I get a little chuckle. Well, then the signs really started showing up. And then I realized, I was like, oh my God, this is a universal word for everybody. My+irony. So it's not my word, it's everybody's word.
No. That is a great story because, hey, that's like such I don't know. Anyways, I'm just getting this irony. That is amazing. Yeah. When you were talking about your mom and, it's difficult, but I'm with that. Every time that there's something, if we're still, I notice that there's all these signs from the universe that I usually say that come to me. One is I remember, anyways, it was at my sister's grave. My mom, my other sister, and I were at the grave, and my niece was with us. So we were sitting, we went into the fair, and we did a cheer to Liz because she was my younger sister. But this was the Myrony. My niece went a song that we would always sing, Elizabeth. We always had the dimes, and Johnny Reed with Darlin'. And she went and got the car, pulled it up, and what was blaring on the radio? And it was a station that would never normally have had that song on it. So you talk about Myrony. I am a staunch believer. It's like, oh my God. All these things that just happen that just take your breath away, and you go, there's no chance, but there is. We just don't know, right, where the songs are going to come from. So I got
goosebumps everywhere from that. And yes, that's so beautiful. And it's like, couldn't you imagine sharing that on social media, sharing that story, and having other people be able to connect to that? Because it's funny, I have a connection with a song also that was when my dad passed away. And so I don't want to go into that again. You just have to listen to episode 1 of my podcast. But it's just it's so amazing, because when you can't explain it, that's the whole point of what it is. But at the same time, don't deny. It's like, don't deny the beauty. I mean, some people want to just say, "Oh, it's just a coincidence." Well, why do we have to say that? Why don't we just appreciate it for what it is? And appreciate it's something that we just maybe are not meant to understand in that moment, but maybe we'll get bigger answers down the line by paying attention.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
Do you think people have a aversion to risk would be a little reluctant to actually pay attention to these details that actually will matter?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, me personally, the journey that I've gone on is a very spiritual journey. The book that I'm writing about how I discovered Myrony, but it's also how I say I found God and not just the universe. And because of just things that had happened, like I was one of those people, I put God in a box known as religion. Not saying there's anything wrong with religion, but I also turned away from a different way of looking things and awareness. And so I think people who are who could have that aversion, maybe they're just not able to tap into that higher awareness. And so that's ultimately what I'm trying to do with this platform of Myrony, is just like, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. But if you just look a little bit deeper, maybe a little bit higher, you might see something that has been right in front of you, but you just didn't know it.
Nice. You've launched a new book recently, right?
Well, I haven't launched. I mean, I'm looking for authors right now for the book.
Okay.
And so the book is actually called Got Myrony, Life is Good, and I plan on doing a bunch of them. So it's Got Myrony, Life is Good, Book 1. So excellent. I have, an author opportunity for people who have a Myronic story that they want to share and be part of the chapter, and also be part of the podcast, and be part of that community. And just so if anybody's interested, I would love to hear from you.
How do we contact you for that?
I'll put my contact information as soon as we're done. I'll pop it in the chat. My name is quite unique. No one else is out there with my name, so I'm pretty freaking easy to find.
She is. So would you give us any words of advice in, let's say, like 2020 has been an interesting year. A lot of things have come about. Margaret Ann and I both can attest to that, Denny too, from our own personal viewpoints. 2021 looks to be a promising year, both south of the border. Congratulations. and staying apolitical, but at the same time, congratulations. Is there anything we should be keeping our eyes open to, or in the grander scheme of things?
I think one of the most important things to always remember is, so I had a very spiritual experience, profound experience 5 years ago. Also, a lot of things happened 5 years ago. And I was given a message that no matter what happens, everything is still okay, that life is good, in the sense that even when it seems to be the worst, it's still there is a bigger meaning behind it. So even with COVID, how amazing, even though despite all the deaths and everything that has happened, how beautiful is it that we're able to connect virtually, where this never would have happened if COVID hadn't happened. And so that's the silver lining. And so I guess it's always trying to look from it from that perspective that the glass is always half full. Just maybe it's going to be a spiritual glass. And, just trying to find the light in whatever is still seems to be dark.